lawyer's office smelled like old books and expensive cologne. I sat in an uncomfortable leather chair, watching my brother Camden smirk from across the mahogany table. Our parents had died 2 weeks ago in a car accident. We were here for the reading of the will. Let's begin, the attorney said, adjusting his glasses. His name was Bernard Hollis, and he'd been my parents' lawyer for 30 years. I, Michael Hartley, being of sound mind. Bernard read the standard legal language, then got to the assets. To my son, Camden Hartley, I leave the family estate at 1247 Belmont Drive, including all furnishings, vehicles, and associated property. Camden's smirk widened. The Belmont estate was worth $8.5 million. 8 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, pool house, 3-car garage, prime real estate. To my daughter, Sloane Hartley. Bernard paused, and I braced myself. I leave the contents of safety deposit box #47 at First National Bank. A box. They'd left me a box. Camden actually laughed. A box? That's it? Mom and Dad left you a box? Camden, please, Bernard said quietly. But Camden was already standing, pulling out his phone. I need to call the realtor. Get that property listed. $8 million? Easy. Sit down, Bernard said, his voice sharp. We're not finished. If only Camden had known what was in that box. If only he'd realized that laughing was the worst thing he could have done. Let me back up to childhood. Camden was 3 years older, and from the moment I was born, he was the favorite. The golden child who could do no wrong. I was 7 when I first understood the dynamic. Camden had broken Mom's favorite vase playing ball in the house. Dad found me holding the pieces, trying to glue them together to make Mom happy. Sloane, what did you do? I didn't. Don't lie. Go to your room. Camden stood in the doorway, smiling. He'd positioned the evidence so I'd be blamed. That was the pattern. Camden got the praise, the attention, the benefits. I got the criticism, the doubt, the blame. When Camden got a B in math, Dad bought him a new computer to support his learning. When I got straight A's, Dad said, good. That's what we expect. When Camden joined the soccer team, the whole family attended every game. When I won the state science fair, Mom said, that's nice, dear, and kept cooking dinner. I thought it was normal, that this was just how families worked. Only later did I understand it was favoritism. Systematic, deliberate favoritism that shaped everything about our lives. By high school, the pattern was set. Camden was the star athlete, the popular kid, the one with potential. I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the one who needed to learn to socialize more. College made it worse. Dad paid for Camden's full ride at an expensive private school. He needs the connections, Dad explained. For me, there was community college, then state school. You're smart enough to get scholarships. Camden needs our support more. I did get scholarships. Full academic ride. But the message was clear. I was expected to be self-sufficient. Camden was entitled to family resources. After college, Camden came home and lived rent-free in the pool house while finding himself. He was 25, unemployed, and spent his days drinking with friends. I was 22, working 2 jobs, and paying rent on a tiny apartment across town. When I suggested Camden should contribute or move out, Mom said, don't be cruel. He's going through a transition. He's been going through a transition for 3 years. Family supports family, Sloane. Don't be selfish. Selfish. I was working 60-hour weeks while Camden lounged by the pool, and I was selfish. But I stopped complaining. Learned that questioning the favoritism only made me the problem. Then Camden got arrested for DUI. Dad paid for an expensive lawyer, covered the fines, and never mentioned it to extended family. We don't need everyone knowing our business, Dad said. When I got a speeding ticket 2 years later, Dad made me pay the fine and told everyone at Thanksgiving about my reckless driving. The double standard was breathtaking. Over the years, I watched Camden receive a car for his 16th birthday while I got a cake, $30,000 for a business investment that failed within 6 months, a down payment on a condo that he eventually lost to foreclosure, countless bailouts for credit card debt, car payments, and legal fees. Meanwhile, I received criticism for my career choices, suggestions that I was too focused on work, pressure to settle down and find a husband, disapproval of my accomplishments because they showed up Camden. By the time I was 32 and Camden was 35, I'd built a successful career in tech, bought my own home, and was financially independent. Camden was living back in the pool house, unemployed again, and still receiving monthly checks from our parents. "You're lucky you're so self-sufficient," Mom told me. "Camden needs more support. Maybe he needs support less. Maybe he needs accountability. You've always been jealous of your brother. I'm not jealous. I'm observing reality." But they couldn't see it, or wouldn't see it. To them, Camden was the child who needed protection. I was the one who'd be fine regardless. When our parents died in the accident, I was sad but not devastated. Our relationship had been distant for years. They came to my wedding but complained the whole time about the venue. They met my children twice. They called maybe once a month, usually to talk about Camden's latest crisis. Camden, meanwhile, had been living with them full-time for the past year. His third business had failed, and he'd moved back home at 35. "Just until I get back on my feet," he'd said. I'd heard that before. At the funeral, distant relatives kept approaching me. "Your parents were so proud of you," they'd say. Were they? Because they'd never told me. "You were always the responsible one, not like Camden." They'd whisper that last part, as if it was a secret. Everyone knew Camden was the failure. Everyone except our parents, who kept enabling him. A week after the funeral, Bernard called. "We need to meet for the will reading, both you and Camden." "When?" "Next Tuesday, 10 a. And, Sloan, I need you to trust me." "Trust you about what?" "Just trust me. No matter what happens in that meeting, see it through to the end." That was an odd thing to say, but Bernard had been our family lawyer for decades. If he was asking for trust, there was a reason. Now, sitting in his office, watching Camden gloat about inheriting an $8 million estate while I got a box, I remembered Bernard's words. "Trust me. See it through to the end. Let's continue," Bernard said, silencing Camden's phone call. "As I was saying, the distribution appears straightforward. However, there are conditions." "Conditions?" Camden asked. "What conditions?" Bernard pulled out another document. "Your parents included specific instructions. Camden, the estate transfers to you only after you maintain stable employment for 1 full year. Employment is defined as full-time work, 40 hours minimum weekly, earning at least the state minimum wage." Camden's face fell. "What? Why would they do that?" "They wanted to ensure you were established before managing a significant asset. The estate will be held in trust during this period. If you meet the employment requirement, ownership transfers. If you don't, the estate is sold and the proceeds distributed differently." "That's ridiculous. I'll just get a job for a year." "Easy. The employment must be continuous," Bernard emphasized. "Any gap longer than 2 weeks disqualifies you. Additionally, you cannot work for any company where you have an ownership stake. It must be legitimate employment." "Fine. Whatever. I'll do it." Camden didn't look concerned. He'd never held a job for more than 6 months in his life. Bernard turned to me. "Sloan, the box is yours unconditionally. I have the key here. You can access it whenever you'd like." "What's in it?" "I don't know. Your father specifically instructed that only you should open it." Camden laughed again. "Probably some sentimental jewelry or old photos. Participation trophy for the daughter who never measured up." I felt rage flash through me, but Bernard caught my eye. He looked almost amused. Like he knew something Camden didn't, Are we done? Camden asked. Almost. One more thing. If Camden fails to meet the employment requirement, the estate will be sold. 70% of proceeds go to Sloan, 20% to designated charities, 10% to Camden as a final bequest. The room went quiet. 70%, I whispered. That's correct. Your parents wanted to ensure that if Camden couldn't demonstrate responsibility, you'd benefit from their estate. This is insane, Camden shouted. You're saying if I don't work some bullshit job for a year, Sloan gets everything? Not everything, but yes, the majority. She doesn't deserve it. I'm the one who stayed with them. I'm the one who took care of them. You lived rent-free in their pool house for a decade, I said quietly. That's not taking care of them. That's the opposite. Camden stormed out. Bernard watched him go, then turned to me. Go to the bank today. Open the box. Your father was very specific that you should see the contents before making any decisions. Decisions about what? You'll understand. I left the office and drove directly to First National Bank. The safety deposit box area was private, sterile. The attendant led me to a small room and brought me the box. It was heavier than I expected. I used the key Bernard had given me and lifted the lid. Inside was a single envelope and a USB drive. The envelope was addressed to me in my father's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Dear Sloan, if you're reading this, your mother and I are gone. I'm sorry we won't be there to see how this plays out. For years, you believed we favored Camden. You were right. We did favor him, but not for the reasons you think. When you were 8 years old, you were tested for a gifted program. The results came back extraordinary, IQ over 150. The psychologist told us you had exceptional potential. She also told us something that changed how we parented you. She said that gifted children who are excessively praised often develop performance anxiety. They become afraid of failure. They stop taking risks because they're afraid of disappointing the people who believe in them. She recommended we treat your achievements as normal, expected, not to diminish them, but to prevent you from feeling that your worth was tied to constant, exceptional performance. For Camden, the opposite was true. He struggled academically. He had learning disabilities we tried to address quietly. He needed encouragement because he was genuinely working hard for mediocre results. What looked like favoritism was actually individualized parenting. We treated you as capable because you were. We treated Camden as if he needed help because he did. I stopped reading, processing this information. They'd known. All along, they'd known I was gifted. They'd intentionally avoided praising me to protect me from performance anxiety. It was. I didn't know if it was brilliant or terrible. I continued reading. But we made mistakes. We overcorrected. We gave Camden too much support, and you not enough acknowledgement. We created a situation where you felt invisible, and he felt entitled. By the time we realized what we'd done, the patterns were set. We tried to correct course. We funded his business ventures hoping he'd find success and become independent. We avoided praising you hoping you'd develop internal motivation without needing external validation. We failed at both. Camden became dependent on our support. You became distant from us. We pushed away the daughter who had flourished and enabled the son who was struggling. This will is our attempt to correct that mistake. The box contains several things. First, documentation of every financial gift we gave Camden over the years. We tracked it all. He received $847,000 in direct support over 15 years. Second, documentation of your achievements. Every award, every accomplishment, every time you succeeded without our help. We kept it all, even though we never told you how proud we were. We were always proud. We just showed it poorly. Third, the USB drive contains video messages your mother and I recorded, explanations, apologies, and things we should have said years ago. Fourth, the employment requirement for Camden is designed to fail. He has never held a job longer than 6 months. He won't meet the requirement. When he fails, the estate will be sold and you'll receive what you should have received from the start, the majority of our assets. The mansion he's celebrating today will be yours in 13 months. We're just making him work for it first. Or rather, we're proving he can't work for it. Fifth and finally, know that we loved you both. But we failed you in different ways. We're trying to fix that now, even though we won't be here to see it. Your mother and I discussed this plan for 3 years. We knew our favoritism of Camden damaged you both. This is our attempt to rebalance the scales. I'm sorry we waited until after death to be honest. Some conversations are too hard to have while alive. All our love, Dad. I sat in that small bank room and cried. For 32 years, I'd believed my parents didn't value me, that I was the disappointment, the afterthought, the child they tolerated. And all along, they'd been trying to protect me. They'd just done it so poorly that it felt like neglect. I watched the videos on the USB drive. Hours of my parents talking directly to the camera, explaining their decisions, apologizing for their failures, telling me they'd been proud all along. We came to your college graduation. Mom said in one video, we sat in the back because we didn't want to make you uncomfortable, but we cried when they called your name. We were so proud. Sloan. We just didn't know how to tell you without making it about us. Your wedding, Dad said in another video. We complained about the venue because we were hurt. You'd planned this whole event without asking our input. It felt like you didn't want us there, but we should have just been happy. You looked beautiful. Your spouse is wonderful. We should have told you that. They'd been hurt by my distance. I'd been hurt by their neglect. And neither of us had known how to bridge the gap. The business you built, Mom continued. Your promotions. Your success. Everything you accomplished on your own. We wanted to praise you. But we'd built this pattern where we didn't acknowledge your achievements, and breaking that pattern felt like admitting we'd been wrong all along. Which we were. We were so wrong, Sloan. The final video was just Dad, recorded a week before the accident. Camden will fail the employment requirement. I know my son. He's never worked a full year in his life. He won't start now, especially knowing there's an $8 million carrot at the end. He'll coast for a few months, assume he's got it figured out, and quit when it gets hard. When he does, you'll get the estate. Not as inheritance, but as correction. The $847,000 we gave him over the years should have gone to you. The mansion should have been yours from the start. You're the one who succeeded. You're the one who built a life. You deserve to benefit from our estate. I'm just sorry we're making you wait a year to get it. But I wanted Camden to have one chance, one opportunity to prove he could be responsible. If he manages to work for a full year, he deserves the estate. But if he doesn't, you deserve it more. I love you, Sloan. I'm sorry I didn't say it enough while I was alive. I left the bank in a daze. My entire understanding of my childhood had been rewritten in 2 hours. My parents had loved me. They'd been proud of me. They'd just expressed it in the most backwards, damaging way possible. That evening, I told my spouse Alice everything. So they intentionally withheld praise to avoid performance anxiety? According to Dad's letter, yes. That's insane. Is it? I mean, there's research on this. Gifted kids who are excessively praised do develop problems. But complete absence of praise isn't the solution. There's a middle ground, which they missed entirely. And now they've set up Camden to fail, so you inherit the estate? Essentially, that's manipulative. It's corrective. They gave Camden nearly $1 million over 15 years. They're trying to balance the scales. By gambling that he'll fail? It's not a gamble. Dad was right. Camden has never held a job for more than 6 months. Alice was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? Wait. If Camden actually manages to work for a year, the estate is his. If he doesn't, it's mine. Do you want the estate? I don't know. It's not about the money. I'm financially stable, but it would be validation, proof that they valued me, even if they showed it poorly. Over the next weeks, I watched from a distance as Camden started his employment year. He got a job at a marketing firm, entry-level position, $45,000 per year. For Camden, who'd been living expense-free his whole life, it was probably the first time he'd actually had to work for money. The first month, he complained constantly on social media. Corporate life is soul-crushing. Can't believe people do this for 40 years. Counting down until I can quit this nightmare. But he kept showing up. Because he knew what was waiting at the end. An $8 million estate. Month 2. Camden's complaints intensified. His boss was incompetent. His coworkers were boring. The work was beneath him. But he kept going. I started to worry. What if he actually made it? What if he worked for a full year and proved everyone wrong? Month 3. Camden called me. This is torture, Sloan. I don't know how you do this. Do what? Work. Actually work for a living. It's exhausting. Welcome to adulthood, Camden. I'm 35. I've been an adult for a while. Have you, though? Living rent-free, getting monthly checks from mom and dad, never having to worry about bills? That's not adulthood. That's extended childhood. He was quiet. Is that what you think of me? It's what I know of you. You've never been financially independent. Never supported yourself. Never had consequences for failure because mom and dad always bailed you out. They loved me. They enabled you. There's a difference. He hung up. But the next day, he posted on social media, maybe I do need to prove something. Month 4, 5, 6 passed. Camden was still employed, still showing up, still complaining but persisting. I was genuinely impressed. Maybe he was changing. Maybe the motivation of the estate was enough to transform him. Then month 7 happened. Camden's boss announced layoffs. Budget cuts. Camden was let go. Not for performance issues, just bad luck. What happens now? He asked Bernard frantically. The employment must be continuous. Any gap longer than 2 weeks disqualifies you. But it's not my fault I was laid off. The requirement didn't include exceptions for circumstances beyond your control. You have 2 weeks to find new employment. Camden scrambled, applied to dozens of jobs, interviewed desperately. But finding employment in 2 weeks is hard, even for qualified candidates. Camden wasn't particularly qualified. Week 1 passed. Nothing. Week 2, day 12, Camden got a job offer. Retail position at a department store. He accepted immediately. Day 13, he reported for orientation. He'd made it. Barely, but he'd made it. The clock reset. He had 11 more months to work. But something had changed. Camden had tasted failure, had felt the panic of potentially losing the estate. He became paranoid about losing this job too. I can't mess this up, he told me during a rare phone call. I'm so close. You're 7 months in, 5 months to go. What if something happens? What if I get sick? What if they fire me? Then you lose the estate. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Camden. But you've gotten breaks your whole life. This is one consequence you actually have to face. You want me to fail. I want you to succeed or fail based on your own merit. For once in your life, he made it through month 8, 9, 10. He was actually doing it, working consistently, showing up, being responsible. I started to think maybe this was good for him. Maybe the structure, the accountability, was what he'd needed all along. Then month 11 happened. Camden got into an argument with his manager. A customer had complained about something Camden didn't do. The manager sided with the customer. Camden lost his temper. I don't need this job, he shouted. In 1 month, I'm going to own an $8 million estate. You think I care about your minimum wage retail position? The manager fired him on the spot. 11 months. He'd made it 11 months. 1 month short of the requirement. When Camden called to tell me, he was crying. I screwed up. I know I screwed up. Yes, you did. What happens now? The estate gets sold, 70% to me, 20% to charities, 10% to you. I don't get anything? You get 10% of $8 million. That's $800,000. That's more than most people see in a lifetime, Camden. But I worked for almost a year. And you quit in month 11 because you couldn't control your temper. That's on you. Please, Sloan. Talk to Bernard. Get him to extend the deadline. Give me another chance. Why would I do that? Because I'm your brother. You're the brother who's gotten everything his whole life, while I got nothing. You're the brother who laughed when you thought I only inherited a box. You're the brother who just proved exactly what Dad predicted. You can't handle responsibility. He hung up. The estate was listed for sale within a week. Given the market and the property's condition, it sold quickly, $8.7 million, above asking price. The distribution was automatic. I received $6,090,000. Charities received $1,740,000. Camden received $870,000. Bernard called to confirm receipt of funds. Your father knew, he said simply. Knew what? That Camden would fail. He set the bar at 12 months because anything longer would have been cruel. But 12 months was achievable if Camden was truly committed. He wasn't. Was this fair? Is fairness giving equal amounts regardless of effort? Or is fairness adjusting for years of imbalance? I don't know. Your parents gave Camden $847,000 over his lifetime. They gave you far less. This distribution, plus Camden's final bequest, roughly equals what he already received. Meanwhile, you get the majority because you never took from them while alive. It still feels manipulative. It is manipulative. Your parents couldn't correct their mistakes while alive, so they corrected them through death. Is that ideal? No. But it's what they could do. I thought about the box, about the letters and videos inside, about my parents' explanations and apologies. What if I split my inheritance with Camden? Made it equal? That's your choice. But ask yourself, would that help him or enable him further? I don't know. Your parents struggled with that question for 35 years. They loved Camden. But their love expressed as enabling destroyed his ability to be self-sufficient. You have to decide if you want to continue that pattern. I didn't split the inheritance. I invested the majority, used some to pay off my mortgage, and donated a significant portion to educational charities. Camden took his $870,000 and bought a condo. Within 2 years, he'd lost it through poor financial decisions and was back to living with roommates. The money my parents had hoped would force him to grow had just delayed the inevitable. 3 years after our parents died, Camden and I met for coffee. We hadn't spoken since the estate distribution. I'm sorry, he said immediately. For what specifically? For laughing when you got the box. For assuming you were the lesser child. For not understanding that our parents treated us differently for complicated reasons. Do you understand now? I'm starting to. I've been in therapy, trying to figure out why I can't seem to build a stable life. And? The therapist says I was enabled. That mom and dad gave me so much support I never learned to support myself. Every time I failed, they caught me. So I never learned to catch myself. That's very self-aware. It doesn't fix anything. I'm 38, broke again, and starting over. But at least I understand why. What are you going to do? Probably fail again. But maybe fail less dramatically. I don't know, Sloan. Maybe I'm just broken. You're not broken. You're habituated. You learned that failure has no consequences because mom and dad always fixed things. Learning that failure has consequences, that's hard. Did you ever feel loved by them? The question surprised me. Eventually, after they died. The box. The letters, the videos. I understood they loved me. They just expressed it poorly. I always felt loved. But now I wonder if that love was healthy. Enabling isn't love, it's fear disguised as affection. We talked for 2 hours. It wasn't reconciliation exactly, but it was understanding. We were both damaged by our parents' choices, just in different ways. 4 years after their death, I used some of the inheritance to start a foundation. It provided financial literacy, education, and support for young adults transitioning to independence. Teaching the skills our parents should have taught Camden, Ellis observed, and acknowledging the skills they did teach me, even if they did it backwards. The foundation grew steadily. We helped hundreds of young people learn budgeting, career planning, and self-sufficiency. One day, Camden applied to volunteer. I know I'm not qualified, he said, but I've learned a lot about what not to do financially. Maybe that's valuable? I hired him. Part-time. Minimum wage. He lasted 7 months before moving on to something else. But it was 7 months longer than I'd expected. Progress. In its own way. 5 years after our parents died, I finally felt at peace with the inheritance. The box had contained more than money or property. It had contained truth. My parents had loved me. They'd been proud of me. They'd just communicated it in the most backwards, painful way possible. And they'd tried to correct their mistakes through the will, forcing Camden to work, giving me the estate when he failed, balancing scales that had been tilted for decades. Was it perfect? No. Was it fair? Depends on how you define fair. But it was their attempt to fix what they'd broken, and in doing so, they'd given me something more valuable than $8 million. They'd given me validation, proof that I'd been seen, valued, and appreciated all along, even when I couldn't feel it. The box hadn't contained jewelry or photos. It had contained truth. And truth, it turns out, is worth more than any estate. 6 years after their death, Camden got married. I attended the wedding, watched him promise to love and support his partner, hoped he'd learned enough to keep those promises. Do you think they'd be proud? Camden asked me at the reception. Of you getting married? Of both of us. Of how we turned out. I think they'd be relieved we're speaking to each other. That's not a no. Camden, they died disappointed in themselves, in how they'd parented us. If they could see us now, working on our relationship, trying to understand each other, yes, I think they'd be proud of that. He nodded. The estate should have been yours from the start. Maybe. But the journey taught me things I needed to learn. Like what? That validation from others, even parents, isn't worth sacrificing self-knowledge. I know who I am. I know what I've accomplished. Whether they acknowledged it or not doesn't change its reality. I'm still figuring out who I am. You have time. You're 39. That's young enough to rebuild. Did you ever forgive them? For the favoritism? Eventually. They did what they thought was right, even though it was wrong. Intentions matter, even when outcomes don't match. Do you forgive me? For what? For being the favorite? For taking their money? For laughing about the box? There's nothing to forgive. You were a kid responding to the environment they created. We both were. 7 years after our parents' death, I received a letter from one of the charities that had received part of the estate. They'd used the money to build a scholarship program for first-generation college students. Your parents' contribution has changed 57 lives so far, the letter read. Students who wouldn't have been able to afford college now have full scholarships. On behalf of everyone whose education has been funded by this gift, thank you. I showed the letter to Ellis. Do you think they knew the money would do this? Your dad tracked every dollar. He was intentional about everything. Yes. I think he knew exactly what that 20% would accomplish. That's almost $2 million changing lives. That's $2 million doing what your parents couldn't do while alive. Creating positive outcomes through strategic choices. It was a legacy. Not perfect, not without complications, but meaningful. 8 years after their death, I was asked to speak at an estate planning conference. "Tell us about the box," the moderator said. "The box your parents left you instead of the mansion." I told the story. The favoritism. The employment requirement. The inevitable failure. The distribution of assets. The videos and letters explaining everything. "What would you tell parents trying to be fair to children with different needs?" someone asked. I'd tell them that fairness isn't about equal treatment, it's about equitable treatment. My parents gave Camden more because he needed more. But they should have acknowledged my accomplishments too. There's a balance between avoiding performance anxiety and providing validation. Do you think the will was fair? I think it was corrective. They'd tilted the scales one direction for 32 years. The will tilted them back. Is that fair? Maybe not. But it was their attempt to fix what they'd broken. Would you recommend similar strategies? No. I'd recommend better communication while alive. Don't wait until you're dead to tell your children you're proud of them. Don't manipulate from beyond the grave when you could just talk honestly while living. 9 years after their death, Camden called with news. I'm going back to school. Getting a degree in social work. That's great. I want to help people who struggle the way I struggled. Kids from enabling families. People who never learned basic life skills. You'd be good at that. Would I? I'm kind of a disaster. You're a disaster who understands being a disaster. That's valuable in social work. He laughed. Maybe. I'm nervous though. About school? About failing again. What if I can't do it? Then you try something else. Failure isn't permanent, Camden. It's just information. When did you get so wise? When I opened a box and learned my parents had been proud of me all along, even when I couldn't feel it. That changed everything. I wish they'd left me a box instead of an $8 million carrot I couldn't catch. They gave you a chance to prove yourself. You almost made it. That's more than you'd done before. 11 months. Which is 9 months longer than you'd ever worked before. That's growth. 10 years after our parents died, I visited their graves for the first time. I'd avoided it, too angry and confused to face the complicated feelings. But a decade had passed. I'd processed the inheritance, the letters, the revelations. I could finally acknowledge them without bitterness. I understand now, I told the headstones, why you did what you did. It was backwards and painful, but you were trying. You were trying to protect me from performance anxiety and trying to force Camden into independence. You failed at both. But you tried. I placed roses on their graves. Mom's favorite flowers. The box saved me, I continued. Not the money that came later. The box itself. The truth inside it. That's what I needed. Not an estate, just acknowledgement. The wind blew through the cemetery, rustling the trees. Camden's going back to school. He's trying to build a real life. That's what you wanted, right? For him to become independent? It took losing the estate for him to start working toward it. I sat on the grass between their graves. I forgive you. For the favoritism. For the poor communication. For loving us in ways that hurt us. I forgive you because I understand you were trying. You just didn't know how. 11 years after their death, the foundation I'd started had grown significantly. We were helping thousands of young adults transition to independence, teaching the skills Camden never learned. You're doing what your parents should have done, my director observed. Teaching self-sufficiency instead of enabling dependency. I'm trying to break the cycle. Make sure other kids don't grow up thinking money will solve their problems, or grow up thinking their accomplishments don't matter. That too, we'd expanded the program to include both financial literacy for enabled youth and achievement acknowledgement for overlooked youth, addressing both sides of the problem my family had exemplified. Camden was in his 2nd year of social work school. Struggling but persisting. I'm not as smart as you. He told me during a study session. This is hard for me. Being smart isn't about grades. It's about persistence. You're showing up. That's what matters. Mom and Dad would have just done my homework for me. Probably. But they're not here. You have to do it yourself. That's terrifying. It's also liberating. Every success is actually yours. Every failure is actually yours. No one to credit but yourself. No one to blame but yourself. I prefer having someone to blame. I know. But that's what has to change. 12 years after their death, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a letter from their estate attorney, Bernard. Sloan, I'm retiring and closing my practice. While organizing files, I found one final letter from your father. He asked me to deliver it to you on the 12th anniversary of his death. Here it is. Bernard. The letter was dated a week before the accident. Dear Sloan, if Bernard is giving you this, it's been 12 years. Camden will be 47. You'll be 44. Old enough to have perspective on the choices we made. I'm writing this final letter to tell you something I couldn't say in the videos or the original box letter. I didn't just protect you from performance anxiety. I protected you from my own weaknesses. I was like Camden when I was young. Enabled. Directionless. Dependent. My parents bailed me out constantly. Only when they cut me off did I finally grow up, build a medical practice, become self-sufficient. I was 35 when that happened. The same age Camden was when we died. I saw myself in Camden. That's why I enabled him. I thought maybe I could save him from the harsh lessons I'd learned. But you can't save people from growth. You can only delay it. I saw your mother in you. Strong, independent, capable. You didn't need us the way Camden did, so we focused on him. That was our greatest mistake. Everyone needs acknowledgement. Everyone needs validation. We gave you neither, thinking you'd be fine without it. We were wrong. This final letter is to tell you. You were always the child we admired. Camden was the child we worried about. We loved you both. But admiration is a form of love too. I hope you know that now. I hope the inheritance taught Camden what our enabling never could. I hope the box taught you what our silence never did. And I hope, 12 years later, you've both become the people you were meant to be. With all my love, Dad. I read the letter 3 times. 12 years of processing, healing, and growing, all validated in one final message. They'd always admired me. They'd just never said it out loud. That evening, I showed Camden the letter. They admired you, he said quietly, and worried about me. That's what I was. The worry. You're not a worry anymore. You're building a life. Am I? I'm 47, in school with kids half my age, living in a studio apartment. That's not exactly success. It's growth. Which is better than stagnation. He read the letter again. Dad says he was like me, enabled until 35, then cut off. Did you know that? No. He never talked about his youth. I thought he'd always been successful. Maybe that's why he enabled you. He thought he could spare you from what he went through. Instead, he just delayed it. But you're going through it now. That counts. Does it? I'm 23 years behind where I should be. You're exactly where you are. Stop comparing yourself to some imaginary timeline. When did you get so zen? When I realized our parents' approval or disapproval didn't define my worth. That's the gift the box gave me. Freedom from external validation. I'm still working on that. You have time. 13 years after their death, Camden graduated with his social work degree. I attended the ceremony, watching him walk across the stage at 48 years old, finally completing something significant. I did it, he said afterward, holding his diploma. You did. They would have been proud. They would have been relieved. That's not the same thing. No. But for you, relief would have been a form of love. They spent 35 years worried you'd never become independent. This would have eased that worry. I wish they could see it. Maybe they can. Who knows? Do you think the box was worth more than the mansion? I thought about it. The box contained truth. The mansion was just property. Truth is always worth more. Even painful truth, especially painful truth, because painful truth can be processed and healed. Comfortable lies just fester. 14 years after their death, Camden got his first job as a social worker. He was working with young adults transitioning out of foster care, teaching them independent living skills. It's hard, he told me, watching these kids struggle with things I never learned until my late 30s. They're 18 and already more capable than I was at 35. That's why you're good at this. You understand what enabling looks like. I understand what it costs. These kids don't have parents to bail them out. They have to figure everything out themselves. I'm teaching them what I wish someone had taught me. Mom and Dad would be proud. You think? I know. This is what they wanted. Independence. Purpose. Contributing to society instead of consuming from it. It took 14 years after their death for me to get here. Better late than never. That's generous. It's realistic. You're doing the work now. That's what matters. 15 years after their death, I received a call from one of the scholarship recipients. She'd graduated college, started a career, and was giving back to the foundation. Your parents' money changed my life, she said. I came from nothing. No family support. No resources. The scholarship made college possible. I'm glad it helped. But it's more than help. It's belief. Someone believed I was worth investing in. That changed how I saw myself. That's what my parents couldn't figure out. How to show belief in their children in ways that empowered rather than enabled or neglected. You figured it out. I'm trying. Still learning. The foundation had now helped over 2,000 young people. Scholarships, financial literacy programs, mentorship, all funded by money that had started as correction. As my parents attempt to fix their mistakes, they were still fixing those mistakes. 15 years gone. Their money was still working, still teaching, still helping young people learn the lessons my brother and I had to learn the hard way. 16 years after their death, Camden called with unexpected news. I'm getting married. Again? This is different. This is real. What makes it real? Because I'm not trying to find someone to take care of me. I can take care of myself now. This is partnership, not dependency. That's good, Camden. Really good. Will you come to the wedding? Of course. And Sloan? I want to say something I should have said years ago. What? I'm sorry for being the favorite. I know that's weird, but I'm sorry. You deserved better than what you got. You don't need to apologize for being loved. I need to apologize for not noticing you weren't. For 32 years, I didn't notice our parents treated us differently. That's on me. We were both kids, responding to the environment they created. There's nothing to apologize for. I'm apologizing anyway. The wedding was small, intimate. I watched Camden promise to be a partner, not a dependent. Watched him commit to building a life with someone, instead of being carried by them. Growth. Real growth. After decades of stagnation. 17 years after their death, I was invited to speak at a conference about complex inheritances. The box versus the mansion. The moderator said, "Tell us about that choice." I told the story again. The employment requirement. The failure. The distribution. The truth contained in a safety deposit box. What did you learn? That my parents loved us both but communicated it poorly. That money can't fix relationship problems. That truth matters more than property. If you could go back, would you want them to handle it differently? I'd want them to communicate while alive, to tell me they were proud. To give Camden accountability sooner. But I can't change the past. I can only understand it. What about your brother? He's a social worker now. Helping young adults learn independence. He became what our parents tried to force him to be, just through a longer, harder path. Was the inheritance fair? Fair is complicated. They gave him nearly $1 million while alive. They gave me $6 million after death. Is that equal? No. Is it equitable given the circumstances? Maybe. Fairness isn't always about identical treatment. 18 years after their death, I visited the mansion. The new owners had renovated it extensively. It didn't look like my childhood home anymore. Do you miss it? Ellis asked. Sometimes. But it's just property. The memories are what mattered, and those I still have. Your parents thought Camden would live here. They hoped he would, after proving himself. But they knew he probably wouldn't. It's strange, isn't it? They set up this whole inheritance structure predicting he'd fail, not hoping he'd fail. Knowing he would unless he changed fundamentally. They gave him a chance. He almost made it. 11 months. Which is growth. Not complete growth, but growth. We drove away from the mansion. I looked back once, then forward. The past was important, but the future mattered more. 19 years after their death, Camden told me something unexpected. I'm applying to graduate school. Clinical social work. I want to specialize in family systems and enabling relationships. That's perfect for you. I'm terrified. What if I fail again? Then you fail. But Camden, you're already succeeding. You've built a life, a career, a marriage. Graduate school is just the next step. I'm 50 years old. Most people start grad school in their 20s. Most people aren't rebuilding their entire lives from scratch in their late 30s. You're right on schedule for your journey. Did the box tell you that? The one Mom and Dad left? The box told me that everyone's timeline is different. That success isn't measured by age but by growth. You're growing. That's success. I wish they could see it. They can. In every kid you help, in every family system you improve. Their legacy isn't the money or the mansion. It's the lessons we learned and now teach to others. That's very philosophical. That's very true. 20 years after their death, I organized a memorial service. 2 decades felt significant. A full generation. Camden and I stood together at their graves, joined by our spouses and children. 20 years, Camden said. We're older now than they were when they died. They were 56 and 54. We're 44 and 47. They died young. They died trying to fix mistakes they'd made parenting us. The employment requirement, the box, all of it was correction. And it worked. Not perfectly, but it worked. You learned independence. I learned I was valued. Was it worth the pain? I don't know. Maybe. Pain teaches lessons, comfort can't. We placed flowers on their graves. Roses for Mom, lilies for Dad. I forgive you, Camden said to the headstones. For enabling me. For making me dependent. For loving me in ways that hurt me. I forgive you because I understand you were trying. I added. And I forgive you for ignoring my accomplishments. For withholding validation. For trying so hard to prevent performance anxiety that you created a different kind of damage. I forgive you because the box taught me what you couldn't say alive. That you were proud of me all along. We stood in silence for a long moment. The box versus the mansion, Camden finally said. You got the better deal. I got truth. You almost got property. Truth is worth more. Yes, it is. 20 years of processing had led us here, to a place of understanding, forgiveness, and peace. Our parents had loved us poorly, but loved us genuinely. They damaged us, but tried to fix the damage. They'd failed in life, but succeeded in death. The box had contained more than letters and videos. It had contained the truth that set me free from years of believing I was unloved. And the mansion, that $8 million property Camden had celebrated inheriting, had taught him that property without responsibility is just a burden waiting to crush you. 21 years after their death, the foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd helped over 10,000 young people. Scholarships, programs, mentorship, all funded by my parents' money, working long after they were gone. Your parents would be amazed, the foundation director told me. This isn't what they intended when they left you the inheritance, isn't it? They left money to charities. They wanted to help people. This is just a continuation of that intent, on a much larger scale, because I had resources they gave me. This is their legacy, not mine. It's both. Camden now worked with the foundation part-time, running programs for young adults from enabling families. I'm teaching them what I learned too late, he explained to a reporter covering the foundation. That being supported and being enabled are different. That love without accountability is harm. How did you learn that? I was given an $8 million estate with one requirement: work for a year. I failed. 11 months in, I quit. That failure taught me what no amount of support ever could. That I was capable of work but not capable of discipline. Do you regret failing? Yes and no. I regret losing the estate, but I don't regret what the failure taught me. Sometimes we need to fail to learn who we really are. The article titled "The Box versus the Mansion: Two Siblings, Two Inheritances, Two Paths" went viral. Thousands of people related to our story. Families with similar dynamics reached out. We're the Camden in our family. We're the Sloan in our family. Our parents did the same thing yours did. The story resonated because it was universal. Favoritism, enabling, neglect, disguised as independence. Families everywhere struggled with these dynamics. 22 years after their death, I published a book, The Box: What My Parents Couldn't Say While Alive. It detailed our story, the inheritance, the lessons learned. It became a bestseller. Camden wrote the foreword. For 35 years, I was the favorite. I received money, support, and unconditional love. My sister received criticism, distance, and the expectation of self-sufficiency. I thought I was winning. I was actually losing, learning dependency instead of capability. She thought she was losing. She was actually winning, learning strength instead of neediness. Our parents died trying to correct their mistakes. The inheritance they left wasn't just money or property. It was truth. This book is that truth, extended to everyone who's ever felt like the favorite or felt like the forgotten. Thank you, Sloan, for sharing our story. And thank you, Mom and Dad, for the hard lessons that took us decades to understand. The book tour was extensive. At every stop, people asked the same questions. Was the inheritance fair? Do you regret not getting the mansion? Did your brother deserve to fail? My answers evolved over hundreds of conversations. Fairness is complicated. They gave us what we needed, even if it wasn't what we wanted. The mansion was property. The box was truth. I'll take truth every time. My brother didn't deserve to fail, but he needed to fail to learn. Sometimes failure is the teacher success can never be. 23 years after their death, Camden completed his graduate degree, clinical social work, specializing in family systems. At 50 years old, he'd finally found his calling. I'm qualified now, he told me at his graduation. Officially qualified to help people with problems I've actually experienced. That's the best qualification, is it? Or is it just making peace with my failures by helping others avoid them? It's both. That's not a contradiction. He started a private practice, specializing in adults from enabling families. I see myself in every client, he told me. The 35-year-old who's never held a job. The 40-year-old still living with parents. The 50-year-old trying to figure out who they are without family support. Can you help them? Sometimes, if they're ready. But you can't help people who aren't ready to change. Did Mom and Dad help you? Eventually, by dying and forcing me to face consequences. That's a terrible way to help, but it worked. Better late than never. 23 years late. But yes, better than never. 25 years after their death, I stood at their graves again. A quarter century had passed. I was 57. Camden was 60. 25 years. I said to the headstones, "You've been gone longer than I knew you as an adult." Camden stood beside me. They were gone before they could see us become who we are now. Maybe that was the point. They couldn't help us become these people while they were alive. So they set up a system that would force us to grow after they died. The box and the mansion, the truth and the test. I failed the test. You passed a different test. You learned what failure teaches. That's more valuable than passing through privilege. We stood in silence, then Camden said something that surprised me. I'm grateful. For all of it. The enabling. The failure. The hard lessons. Without them, I'd still be that 35-year-old living in the pool house, waiting for the next bailout. And I'm grateful for the box. For learning they'd been proud of me all along, even when I couldn't feel it. That knowledge changed everything. Do you think they'd be proud of us now? I think they'd be relieved. They died worried about both of us. Worried I'd never feel loved. Worried you'd never grow up. We've both addressed those worries. In our 50s. Better late than never. We left the cemetery as the sun set. 25 years of processing, healing, growing. 2 siblings damaged by love expressed poorly, saved by truth revealed late. The box versus the mansion. Truth versus property. Growth through failure versus validation through achievement. Our parents had given us both, just in ways we couldn't understand until decades later. If only they'd been alive to see it. If only they'd known that their death would teach us what their life couldn't. If only they'd realized that the box and the mansion weren't competing inheritances, but complementary lessons. But they weren't alive. They'd died trying to fix their mistakes, leaving behind money, property, and most importantly, truth. And that truth, contained in a safety deposit box worth nothing financially, had been worth more than any mansion ever could be, because the mansion was just property, but the box? The box was love, expressed through the only means they had left. Honest words written for eyes they'd never see, read them. That was the inheritance that mattered. That was the gift that kept giving. That was what my parents couldn't say while alive, but finally said when death gave them the courage to be completely, painfully, beautifully honest. I got the box. Camden got the mansion. Briefly. And we both got the lessons we needed, even if it took 25 years to fully understand them. That was the real inheritance. Not money, not property, but understanding. And understanding, it turns out, is worth more than any estate.